I'm your host, Jilcha Hamid, and this is OMN Insight. I'm joined today here by Swedish MP Thomas Hammarberg. Thomas, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
And we had a meeting today with the Ethiopian ambassador in Stockholm. We were a delegation from the government party, the Social Democrats, leading a group of people with experience of international situation in Ethiopia and wanted to have some more information, basically.
Okay. And what was the outcome of that meeting?
It was a very constructive meeting. And of course, we are not like the Americans that we impose things on other countries. And also there is, of course, a close relationship between Sweden and Ethiopia since history, actually, and a friendship and understanding. But and of course, the Peace Prize in last December was also very much observed in Sweden, and we felt that something was really developing very positively. But in recent times, we have heard some and got some information which we feel that there is a need to discuss and also to understand better what is actually going on. And we had some recommendations, friendly recommendations, and the ambassador promised to bring that directly to the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed. And of course, that was very positive to us because it feels that a dialogue has started between us. In fact, one of the basic points that we made was that it's also important to have a dialogue between the political groups in Ethiopia itself. Dialogue was one of the themes that we discussed.
Fair enough. And I just want to give our viewers a little bit of background on the situation. So on June 29th, the Oromo music icon and human rights activist Hachalu Hundessa was assassinated in the capital of Finfinne. That was followed by protests and a major government crackdown, which results in hundreds of protesters killed, thousands wounded, and thousands more detained in makeshift prisons all around the country. The major opposition leaders such as Jawar Mohammed, Bakala Garba, Hamza Borana, and from the OLF as well, you have German citizen Dr. Shagut Galata. All have been detained. The journalists and media have also been cracked down on. In particular, OMN has had its license revoked and is no longer able to operate in the capital, and a lot of its staff has been detained. Its office has been raided. So you did write a letter about that to the foreign minister of Sweden. So can we just get into that a little bit? What was the content of that letter, and what do you hope to get from that?
Yeah, what you mentioned was the key parts of our approach to the foreign minister, and of course she will now study that very carefully. You know, when we look back at the files, we noted, of course, the speech by the Prime Minister when he got the Peace Prize, where he promised so many things, and also that he said that already political prisoners have been released, torture stopped, we are guaranteeing freedom of expression, freedom of media, there will soon be an election, etc. And this is only 17 months ago. And now we have reports which makes us worried that this optimism that seemed to be there during his speech there in December has not really bear fruit, and something negative is happening. People are put in prison, and we feel that there is a need to and also express our concern. So that was the purpose of this visit. The ambassador promised to bring this directly to the Prime Minister. And we really hope that this will be a beginning of a dialogue, because we are concerned. concerned because we have a very positive picture of the country itself and its people, and we feel that's even our obligation to express our concerns in the situation.
Fair enough. That sounds very encouraging. On the issue of human rights, we've seen reports of security forces firing on protesters. We've seen women, children, elderly victims in hospitals. So it's very concerning. We've also seen thousands of prisoners being held in makeshift prison camps where COVID-19 is rampant. It's been spreading even amongst some of the opposition leaders, apparently. So it's very worrying, and a lot of people believe that this is, a tactic that the government is using to eliminate or even, exterminate the opposition. So a lot of people have questions whether the government or whether the Nobel Peace Prize should have been awarded to Abiy, considering his deeds and the way his government has performed since his rise to power. So what do you have to say about that?
As the situation was then, last year, with the agreement with the Eritrea about peace between the two countries, and also some of the steps that the Prime Minister had taken when it comes to encouraging people to return from exile and giving promises about various positive steps when it comes to human rights. I think it was worthwhile to reward that step then. But that makes it even more difficult for us when it comes to what has happened afterwards. And we really do hope that there will be a turnaround now and sort of fulfill what we understood were the pledges in December last year. Because the Peace Prize is very important. And of course, there's a Swedish element there, which makes it important for us as well. And they hope that those who get the prize will also be able to continue in their positions in order to secure that, for instance, human rights are fulfilled all the time. Myself, I read very much the report from Amnesty International, for instance. I was myself Secretary General of Amnesty International some years ago. And the concerns that they express, I think, need to be taken very seriously. And they mentioned the mass arrest of young people after the murder and the unrest that came after the murder. They raised the problem of the security agencies and their activities, and that some of the political leaders are actually put in prison and detained. And this is not in the spirit that we would hope that the country would develop. And that's why we wanted to discuss what can be done, and of course share a bit of the experiences we have. But in a friendly manner. We are not there to sort of black the country of Ethiopia internationally. We hope that there will be some steps taken now before long, because the pandemic, of course, is a problem in every country, but it cannot be seen as an excuse for sort of not securing that everything is done to implement human rights issues. So that was the background, and we hope that there will be a response from the government, and we will take this, of course, very seriously.
Fair enough. And I just wanted to get into a little bit sort of the treatment of the political prisoners. They've communicated through their lawyers some very harsh treatments, including beatings by security forces. There's been they haven't had access to proper food. They haven't had access to legal counsel or ability to meet with their lawyers in private. They've explained that security forces are sitting in on their meetings with their lawyers. So that's another concerning issue. They're being held in cold conditions underground. Once again, COVID-19 rampant, prisons. And sort of, I just wanted to, because you said that your approach is, more friendly and considering the relations between Sweden and Ethiopia. But with this situation, do you think that the nice approach will work? We know that in the past, the European Union has used some of its leverage to secure the release of political prisoners, such as after the 2006 election. So what is your take on that? I mean, do you think that that approach is going to work? And is the EU and Sweden willing to take more of a drastic measures to ensure that these conditions are improved?
Of course, that's the aim of the whole operation from our side, that there would be changes. And we have also got people who told us, and also Amnesty International, which I mentioned, have even published reports which indicate that the treatment of those who are arrested and imprisoned, that there are problems there. There are problems in how they treat. And it seems that it's very difficult for relatives and friends even to know precisely where some of the prisoners are. And the sort of the information is that one doesn't know, which is serious in itself. We believe that if we could establish a constructive dialogue now with the authorities, that one of the key points would be to secure that, first of all, that those who should not be in prison are released. And this seems to us to be a moment for an amnesty. Secondly, that there is a need to see whether some steps could be taken in order to secure that the security forces and the police would behave in a different way in the future and not use the kind of methods which obviously have been used now recently, especially after the murder. And so there are things that we feel should be done. And I really hope that there will be a response on what we said today, which would make it possible for us to sort of continue to discuss more in detail our own experience when it comes to how the security should act and how you secure that no one should be in prison if there aren't very strong reasons for them to be there. Otherwise, they should just be released. I think, especially in a situation where there seems to be a need to find an understanding between the different political parties all over the country, an understanding, a dialogue, that is extremely unfortunate that some of the political leaders are in prison. There's a clash there, which of course should be avoided. So this is a kind of issues I think we will be able to discuss if we could establish a real dialogue now.
Fair enough. And if the Ethiopian government decides to go ahead with the elections while all the opposition leaders are in prison, would the EU and would Sweden recognize the elections as free and fair?
That would be extremely unfortunate. First of all, we think it would be positive if one could begin to discuss more clearly when the election would take place. We understand that the pandemic is a problem here because people have to queue up before they could cast their votes, etc. And there are some other countries also which have delayed. But the problem is if there is no clarity that there will actually be rather soon, as soon as the pandemic doesn't prevent the possibilities of election, that there will be an election, that people are informed. But before that could be that step could be taken, it is very important to secure that the opposition also has a chance in the election, and they wouldn't have a chance if they are imprisoned, of course. But there should be a sort of an atmosphere before the election which would make it possible also for the opposition to tell people what they would stand for and what they would do if they got the power. That is what democracy is all about. So both to secure that there will be election and that there will be clarity about when the election would take place, under what circumstances, and then also to give the opposition parties a chance to take part in what must be a free and fair election.
Fair enough. And back to the issue about, I mean, the relationship between Sweden and the EU and Ethiopia. They've played more of a role as, you know, a donor, obviously, and a donor of aid, and also an advocate of human rights and democratization in Ethiopia. So back to the leverage, when we talk about, you know, the relationship as a major contributor of aid, is that something that you'd be willing to use as leverage to ensure freedom of the press, the release of political prisoners, and free and fair elections?
Of course, some of the assistance from our country is going to non-governmental organizations and independent organizations. So that kind of assistance would not be affected by problems when it comes to what the government has done. But we cannot support, for instance, the prison system if there are problems with the prisons and who are there and treatment there. So there will be a review of what could be the continuation of Swedish assistance. But for the moment, we really hope that there will be changes soon, a real dialogue between the different parties in the country, and a preparation of a situation where there will be free and fair elections.
Fair enough. And let's get a little bit to the politics of the country. Right now, there is tension between two ideologies, the current, those who support the current federalist system and those who seek to abolish it and return to the Ethiopia of old. A lot of federalists are suspicious of Abiy because of his rhetoric about federalism. They believe that he eventually plans to return to the Ethiopia of old, of Emperor Menelik and Haile Selassie, who he frequently mentions in his speeches. And so how do you view that? Is there real suspicion?
You disappeared now from me.
I think we're having technical issues here.
Now I hear you again. So when it comes to that problem of how the whole country is organized in a way, the approach we take in such situation is that it's not up to us to have strong views on how it's organized, but that there should be any change must be done after real consultation with people in the various parts of the country. So every change must be very democratic. Otherwise, there is a risk of confrontation. And of course, we have been informed that there have been a bit of that as well. So our recommendation when it comes to that, if we have a real dialogue now with the government soon, would be that any change must be the result of real consultation and agreement, because otherwise you will open up wounds which might be very difficult to handle in the future. In Sweden, for instance, when we have that kind of discussion, that it's very difficult to do the changes, but when it's done, It really is the result of consultation between everyone, and everyone feels happy with that change was necessary and important.
Fair enough. And getting more into that, well, the reason why federalists believe that that is a better system for the country is because it preserves the ethnic, cultural, and language heritage of the peoples of Ethiopia. So there are over 80 different nations in Ethiopia. In the past, they've been dominated by one language and one culture and one narrative. After the fall of the regime, Mengistu Haile Mariam in 1991, the federalist system was implemented, and it was seen as a positive change in the country. Currently, one of the reasons federalists are suspicious of the Abiy government is because they've seen him stack the different government institutions, from the security force to the Ethiopian Broadcast Authority, which is in charge for giving licenses to media, and the National Electoral Board, have all been appointed by people who are against federalism. And we've already seen the effects of that. I mean, OMN license being revoked, another Tigrayan media license being revoked. The OMN director, Girma Gutama, recently released an article where he pointed out that there are over 60 radio stations with licenses in Ethiopia. There are over 30 TV stations, and only 4 of those operate in Afan Oromo. The rest of them are in Amharic. So that is a major concern. The Ethiopian Broadcast Authority is seen as, singling out Oromo media and trying to get it banned. So that's been a concern. How do you see that? I mean, is there a better way than federalism? I mean, I know it's not your place to say, but
it is difficult for an outsider to have a strong position on this. And what we tend to do is rather to emphasize that if there are changes in one way or the other here, it must be based on a real understanding by the overwhelming majority of the people in the country. You mentioned the election board, and we have heard the same thing that you mentioned. And we feel that when we plead for genuine democracy and understanding between the various groups, it's very important that the composition of the election board is based on the same principle and the same effort, really, to secure that all the different opinions are represented in that board. And if that isn't the case, that is a problem.
fair enough. And with the situation with the pandemic in Europe, Sweden being one of those countries greatly affected by COVID-19, how much of a priority is democratization in Africa to Sweden and the EU right now?
I think it's still there, frankly. In a way, it may even later on increase because it is clear. One consequence of the pandemic is that those who are most suffering from this are the poor people. Those who have not, possibilities to talk with the leaders and be in the parliament and things like that. And that makes it necessary to have an international view on this and try to secure that any country which needs some support or some ideas from others, they should be taken seriously. So I think the philosophy of the Swedish development assistance program will not be changed here. Rather, I think there will be a growing understanding that there is a need of continuing, perhaps even increase the contributions from our country. Of course, there are people in our country here who feel that there are so many problems also in Sweden that we should keep all the money we have to resolve problems here. Yes, I see that point as well, but we will continue to share part of our experience and also in some cases a bit of money to support and to build an understanding between us and other countries.
Fair enough. And we're just gonna, conclude with the situation right now. The country is seemingly returning to the situation prior to the reform, with protests going on across the country, not just in the Oromia region. It's recently spread to the Walaita region in the south, where over 20 people have been killed by the security forces. Once again, very unfortunate. The country is returning to a situation of a state of emergency, seemingly. I mean, what is your outlook on the situation?
We would not do what we're doing now with the really official message to the foreign minister and having the meeting with the ambassador, including with the head of the, in the parliament, the head of the foreign affairs committee, if we weren't serious about this. We really feel that there's a crisis situation in Ethiopia for the moment. And when I read through the speech by the Prime Minister in Oslo and saw that there were so many good promises given there, and hearing and understanding and reading reports about what is going on now, I see the gap. And the gap is enough for us to express, not in the American way, imposing everything and sort of without really studying the things. We are not operating like that. But if we are serious about friendship, one has to tell the truth. And that's what we would like to discuss. I feel that there is a need of something. The reports we get are alarming. And we feel that some of the promises that was given by the Prime Minister in Oslo have not been fulfilled now, 17 months later. So that's in itself a message that requires a discussion. So we feel that there's a need of some changes taking place fairly soon, and some of the problems probably relates to the pandemic, but not all of them. And there seems to be a growing polarization in the political life in a situation when we would need the opposite, understanding, trying to build a dialogue, understanding on how you share the power. That, for instance, is election committee that you mentioned, the board there, that would be a place where you have all the different opinions really represented there, not only one part of the political sphere. So there are things to change, of course, now, and that's why we wanted to raise this issue in a friendly manner, as I've said several times now. But I think it's better that we have a dialogue than the Americans and others bring in their sort of approach to how to deal with these problems, because some of those who are active internationally don't understand the real situations and are not very serious about going through and learn about the situation. And they act too early, usually. We would like to be different. And as I said now, we really hope that there will be a genuine dialogue between our two countries. And we hope that will be of help when it comes to securing that there will be a real dialogue between the political parties in the country, people released from prison, including the many young people who have been put in prison as well, and that the media could start functioning in a free manner and not sort of being closed down because of what they've said in their reports. So there are a lot of things, and I hope there will be a fruitful exchange with our country.
Fair enough. That sounds great. And so we're going to conclude on that point. Thank you for joining us, Thomas. We look forward to having you on soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to thank our viewers for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
OMN